So let's do this. When I was a kid, my family had a running joke about time zones. My mom, who was very smart and was a travel agent, could never figure out what time it was anywhere else. The joke always ended with someone shouting, "It's the International Dateline!" Then we'd pull out a map. I loved maps. They were comforting and helped me understand my world. Where am I? Where can I go? How do I get there? But I grew older, and I was exposed to different worldviews and lived experiences. Maps started feeling like they'd been lying to me, so I started questioning them. I became insufferable at parties. Did you know that Africa is actually 14 times larger than Greenland? You know why maps always have north at the top? I'll tell you, imperialism. I didn't get invited to a lot of parties. So, with all my free time, I started learning about longitude. Longitude controls space and time on Earth. First, let's talk about space. Longitude and latitude are the fancy words for where on Earth am I? For longitude, you have to know how far east or west you are of an imaginary line and what time it is here and there. Today, that line runs through London's Greenwich Observatory. Second, let's talk about time. Because Earth rotates on its axis 15 degrees of longitude an hour, it takes the sun 5 hours to travel 75 degrees of longitude. So if your watch says it's 5 p.m. in London, but you're hungry for lunch, you're probably looking at the Statue of Liberty. You know why? Imperialism. For Europeans, longitude was the 18th century version of the space race. In 1714, British Parliament offered up to £20,000 to anyone who solved the problem. That's about $5 million today. Spain and France also had these prizes, and France also built an observatory to rival Greenwich. Why was longitude worth $5 million? Well, everyone wanted to control space and time. Global trade, colonial expansion, and military dominance are easier if you have a first-mover advantage around technology. In the race to dominate territory, knowing your location helped you project power globally. Think about this stamp, a French African country celebrating Captain Cook colonizing the Polynesians. Speaking of, over in the Pacific, Polynesian voyagers had already solved their own longitude problem, helping them discover and settle this comically large triangle anchored by Hawaii, New Zealand, and Easter Island. For scale, take Europe. You know what? Take 4 Europes. They all fit inside the Polynesian triangle. Polynesians didn't need maps or fancy technology because they used the world around them to guide their stories. Wayfinders committed navigation aids to memory, passing along the information to the next generation. Voyagers would use star charts like this one. Each unique pattern of stars led wayfinders to different islands from a known starting point, like Google Maps. Beyond star charts, they observed the flight patterns of birds to guide them toward islands. Wayfinders also visualized island groups by the direction, shape, and power of ocean swells and currents. And they could identify shallow water or sandy beaches by the color of the clouds and the tint of the sky. If calculating longitude was that era's space race, Polynesians were already exploring Mars while Europeans were jumping off cliffs with wings strapped to their backs. I don't mean to romanticize Polynesian expansion. They depleted the natural resources of islands by outstripping their carrying capacities and introducing invasive species, but they did not practice industrial-scale colonization. And yet, these two worlds collided literally and figuratively when Europeans started exploring previously unknown to them corners of the globe. By the early 1500s, European sailors were discovering islands in the Pacific, mostly by accident. For our story, let's revisit Captain Cook, who took 3 trips to the South Pacific in the 1770s. Captain Cook was the closest the British had to an astronaut in their 18th century space race. During the half-century when Britain was splashing cash on longitude, there were a ton of new gadgets being developed by inventors hoping to snag that cash and the glory. Cook tested out several new tools on his voyages. Apparently, it earned him the right to be on a bunch of stamps. Ironically, though, on his first voyage, Captain Cook realized that traditional methods might be more useful to him. He hired a Polynesian wayfinder, Tupaia, to help the British Navy sail from Tahiti to New Zealand. Even though he was issued a British outfit, Tupaia did not get his own stamp. But he drew a map from memory. It's centered on his home island near Tahiti and charts 74 islands in a 2,000-mile radius. I got choked up on this one last night too. Modern Polynesian voyagers have used this map along with traditional wayfinding techniques to sail along known voyaging routes through the Pacific today. For Tupaia, the starting point mattered, but clues along the journey mattered more. But by the time Captain Cook went on his second voyage, he was carrying a chronometer, basically a rugged clock. It was truly revolutionary. This device kept such accurate time that sailors anywhere on Earth could compare noon in London to noon aboard ship. The inventor, John Harrison, was awarded $5 million. Crazy thing? He was just a carpenter who liked clocks. Harrison's chronometer, though, opened the world's oceans to the British, launching the country into its age of global empire. Harrison had to fight for his reward, though. Parliament did not want to pay him because of petty squabbles, big egos, and money troubles. Harrison had to ask King George III to shame Parliament into paying him. The longitude problem allowed Britain to center the map on themselves and measure space and time from their seat of political power, London. During the long century that followed, it was said that the sun never set on the British Empire. Because Britain had the equivalent of a quantum computer aboard ship, it could dominate the oceans and far-flung colonies, including Polynesia. The best way to make everyone think you're the center of the world is to actually make yourself the center of the world, and then force others to adopt your viewpoint. For Britain, the longitude problem may have started as a navigation aid, but morphed into a tool that could help them project power on a global scale. They had mastered space. Time can also be a tool for colonization. Think about time zones for a second. They're only possible because we know our longitude. Even today, the world sets its clocks relative to Greenwich Mean Time. This was purposeful at the height of the British Empire. They placed themselves at the center of timekeeping, their global empire pointing back to London, reminding the colonized who was in charge. As we navigate the brave new world of tech solutions to society's problems, I think it's worth remembering the longitude problem. Before you use a new technology, ask yourself why the tool was created, who is funding its creation, and what the consequences might be. And maybe, if I've done my job tonight, you'll look at Google Maps or ChatGPT and think, imperialism.